Happy Friday, Baylor College of Medicine and friends of Baylor. My sister's been after me all week about a Q&A, so it's time to do our monthly or whatever Q&A. She has a lot of questions, but I got a lot of questions. First and foremost, by far, should I get my kid vaccinated? Well, of course you should get your kid vaccinated, but that's not good enough. That's not fair. I'm just going to tell you why. Just think about it. The world has changed. So 1 year ago, when we were mostly infected by a virus that was from Wuhan in Europe, and Europeans on the East Coast that came to visit the U.S., that was way back then. The virus has changed quite a bit in a year. We have all these variants. It's more infectious. In Brazil, it's infecting a younger population. There have been more children deaths. Researchers in Sao Paulo believe that particularly the Gamma variant is killing a large number of kids. And so the Brazilian health ministry is worried because they've had over 1,200 children under the age of 10 who've died. So the virus that your kids will be exposed to is not the same virus that started this pandemic. It's a more virulent and difficult virus. And so I would strongly recommend that you get the vaccine because the vaccines are very effective against the Brazilian variant, the UK variant, as well as the Delta variant from India. So I think it's really, really important to protect your children. I just think it's really, really important. So, and as you know, so far everyone over 12 years of age is recommended, and we think very soon, between 2 and 12, we'll get results, hopefully by September. And if you look at infant deaths now, COVID is above cancer and drowning, and it's getting onto the list of diseases that do kill children. So I strongly recommend it. I had a question. I already had COVID and recovered. Why do I need to be vaccinated? Well, there's a very good reason. We went over a couple of papers. If you get vaccinated, your titers are high enough to be able to deal with all the variants. If you just get the infection naturally, you'd get resistance to it, but not as intense as you would with an extra vaccine. So there's a couple of papers that we reviewed a few weeks ago that show clearly with a vaccine after being infected, you will be very resistant to the variants. And then when people do get reinfected after having it, it's often with one of these variants. So I think it's really important. Do I still need to wear a mask if I'm fully vaccinated? Well, according to the CDC, you do not. You can resume activities, including, being around other people. Now, I still, personally, it's 95% effective. That's a 5% chance. Until the viral burden is low in our community, I don't feel comfortable hanging around with several hundred people because I know there'll be a lot of people who are infected. But as the viral burden goes down in your community, and for me, it's when it's fewer than 40 cases a day in our community, then I'll feel perfectly comfortable going to a stadium with 5,000 people. But right now, I still am a little bit reluctant to do that, but the CDC says you're fine. So my sister wants to know, can I go to the theater? When it opens, and if you get tickets. That's it. Only my sister. She'll expect me to get her tickets, But again, same thing. If the viral burden is low in the city, and then I'd feel pretty comfortable. But if there's still a lot of virus in the community, I wouldn't feel comfortable with being in a room with 1,500 people in a closed environment. But soon, I'm very confident soon we'll be all ready to do that as the viral burden goes down. Here's a good one. If I had a choice of vaccine, which one should I get? Get the first one you can get. That's what I would do. The only one I wouldn't particularly feel very strong about is AstraZeneca, because AstraZeneca has been shown to be less effective, particularly against the South African variant. But, we know the complications. There's been that rare thrombosis with thrombocytopenia syndrome, TTS, that's been reported with the J&J vaccine. And there's been it's been some of the myocarditis, pericarditis that's been associated with the mRNA vaccines. So each one has a little bit of a complication, very rare, extremely rare. But I would just pick one. If you're afraid of needles, I get the J&J because it's one shot. If I'm pregnant, should I get vaccinated? I get this one all the time. So the answer is yes. There's been a bunch of studies, and many of the people in the original trials, many of the women got pregnant. There's no complication with pregnancy. The only thing I would consider is if you're within 2 weeks of delivery, and because the second dose might give you, fever and make you feel bad, I probably wouldn't do it then. But any time other than that and afterwards, I'd feel perfectly comfortable getting vaccinated. This was a tough one. This was from one of our staff here who has a mother that lives in Kenya, and she said she got 2 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine, but with the Delta variant becoming more prevalent, what would you recommend? Should she get another booster? So we had a little bit of debate with the infectious disease folks and me, but I think we came to the agreement that with the concern of the Delta variant, it probably would be wise to get a booster with one of the mRNA vaccines. So, but again, AstraZeneca is not as good as the others for certain of the variants. So I personally I would suggest a booster. If a person is vaccinated with Pfizer, should they worry about the Delta variant? The answer is no. The Delta variant is handled by the Pfizer vaccine. My Canadian friends. My friend in Canada received the first dose of Pfizer, but there's not enough supply for the second. You got to love Canada. Because they were so on top of it, and then they screwed it up so badly. Should she try to get a Moderna or wait for the Pfizer to be available? I would wait to see if you can get the Pfizer vaccine. But if it looks like it's going to be forever, I'd get a second dose within 4 to 6 weeks, something like that. So I prefer you get the second booster shot with the first vaccine. But if you can't get it, I'd probably just do a Moderna then. Do we know if the new cases in Houston area and the hospitalization is still occurring from unvaccinated people? Yeah, mostly the people who are coming in hospitalized, needing hospitalization from COVID are people who have not been vaccinated. How can we access the weekly TMC slides? Well, they're available at tmc.edu, and maybe we can put that on at the end. Are children more at risk in certain areas of the country? Really interesting question. Actually, they're at risk from the areas that have low vaccine rates. So the Southeast and the Mountain West are the places in the United States that have the lowest vaccine adoption. And so, yeah, they're at risk there because there's more virus in the community. Where are children at most risk for being exposed to COVID-19? Well, it's usually in social gatherings, birthday parties, children's birthday. It's the same as when, in the beginning of the pandemic. They're unvaccinated, they're susceptible. Anytime you get gatherings of, multiple houses together, that's where they're susceptible. I got a lot of questions about the Baylor post-COVID care clinic. So, what is the purpose of the post-COVID clinic? We're going to put the website address on at the end so you can go see it. But basically, it's to take care of people who have sustained complications from having been infected. And they're called longhaulers. They're people who have lingering symptoms and side effects of having had the virus. So one person asked, what are the long COVID symptoms? And usually it's fatigue, headaches, loss of taste and smell, joint muscle pain, palpitations, and a lot of depression and anxiety. So people forget that getting the disease is one thing, you get over it, but a certain percentage of people, they continue to have symptoms. And there's some concern that they might have long-term complications, both cardiac and pulmonary. So that's the whole purpose of the clinic, is to follow people up to make sure we can manage their complications. Can COVID vaccines help some long haulers? That's an interesting question. There is some data suggesting that in about 30 to 40%, that a vaccine might actually improve their symptomatology. It's not 100% clear why that is. It's probably they're getting an enhanced immune response to some of the viral antigens, but it's not all that clear. But there is some evidence that it works. What are the long haul symptoms in children? Well, there's a couple of studies that looked at this. A lot of mental health problems, tiredness, weakness, fatigue, abdominal pain. Many of the patients have problems with concentration and have had significant short-term memory problems. So remember, the virus gets in through the ACE2 receptor, which is mainly in vasculature, but also the neuropilin receptor, which is in the olfactory bulb and in the brain and nerves. And so when the virus gets into those cells, it takes them a while to recover. And so a lot of the complications are related to the dysfunction of those particular cells. What are things that long haulers can do to take care of themselves? It's really, really interesting. It looks like things like supportive care, healthy diet, exercise, breathing exercise, resuming physical activity, and not being sedentary really helps some of the mood disorders. So I think that's really, really important. And then there's one person said or asked, what's the estimate of the number of people who have long-term symptoms after COVID-19 illness? And there have been multiple studies. On the low end, probably 10%. On the higher end, 30%. They tend to be more common in females, older, elevated BMI, overweight, and those who had multiple symptoms during the first week of the illness. So, it's a real problem. That's why we've tried to address this and have that as a separate clinic. Several other institutions are doing that. I think it's important. We want to make sure that you get the best care you possibly can if you have these sustained symptoms. So that's all the questions I got. I wanted to remind everyone, it's July 4th coming up. Lily's very excited about it. Both Lily and I want to wish you a great July 4th. She's really excited about the hot dog eating contest, and she's looking forward to the fireworks. So, big weekend coming up, big holiday weekend. Everybody stay safe, and I can't wait to see you next week.
Lily, you do realize this is a hot dog eating contest and not a hot dog costume contest.
Go!